What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Andrew Cooper here of the Fantasy Alarm. This is Coop's Fantasy Football Fiasco for our last Friday show for a little bit. We're going to be back very soon. Honestly, I would probably just keep going, but I got a wedding to go to. So we're going to take a little break, but we'll be back with Dynasty content, all that good stuff. I've already been working behind the scenes on a bunch of Dynasty stuff. Check on the channel up now, a full breakdown of Marvin Harrison Jr. Looked at all the stats, looked at all the film. So I went through fantasy points, Pro Football Focus, Pro Football Reference, all that stuff, pulled up all the stats, and then watched 500 plus routes and kind of did a breakdown on that. And I shared some of the clips breaking that down with you guys. Today, we're going to do our last bit of fantasy football for this year. Anand Nanduri, my guy, is going to be joining me very soon. And we're going to go in and look at FFPC Second Chance Challenge, right? Honestly, in my opinion, the last great fantasy football contest of the year. There's still 8 teams left. And in this one, you go in and you pick one guy from each team and you try to figure out the pieces of the puzzle to win this contest, right? And there's a lot of ways to do it. The Super Bowl is worth double points. For those not familiar with the contest, here's how it goes. You pick one player from each of the 8 teams. So we're talking Lions, Chiefs, Eagles, Ravens, Bills, Rams, Commanders, Texans. Super Bowl is worth double points. It's tight end premium. And here's the thing. You actually don't have to have your quarterback in the final game. Last year's winner in the $200 contest had Lamar Jackson, who did not make it to the Super Bowl because it's tight end premium. Travis Kelce went off. Christian McCaffrey went off on the other side. A lot of ways to do this. So Anand's going to join us momentarily, and we're going to jump in on that. Before we get to that, again, I just want to reiterate this offseason. Let me know. Let me know in the comments on here or in the comments of the Marvin Harrison Jr. video what you want to see in terms of those players, because I'm going to break down a few of them. You can't do them all. I know Marvin Harrison Jr. is a divisive player. I want to do Xavier Legette. I want to do a bunch of the tight ends, obviously, because that's kind of what we do. But let me know in the comments of this as well. I mean, whoever you guys want, I'm a man of the people. So why don't we jump in and pull up the sheet here and just start looking at some of these squads and what the odds are of them making the NFC and AFC championship. That's kind of the deal here. I've got a whole article up on the strategy for FFPC and what goes into it and kind of the best ways to navigate this contest, right? But one of the key things, obviously, is you want to have an idea of who you think moves on and who you think doesn't. And it's honestly just as important for the players you pick for the teams that go deep as the players that you pick for the teams that don't go anywhere, right? If you lose this round, it's huge to actually have the guy that scores the most from those teams because you can only pick one guy from each team, right? So if I go in, for instance, and I pick, well, actually, you know what? Why don't we look at last year first? Last year, if you were to pick a Bills player who the Bills lost in this round, right? If you picked Josh Allen, you lost. Your quarterback only played one game. If you picked James Cook, you lost. If you picked Stephon Diggs, you lost. The guy that you had to pick to essentially give you a leg up on everyone else, the guy that outscored everyone else, was Khalil Shakir. So if you're looking at these teams that are potentially going to lose, in your opinion, going to lose, you got to ask yourself, well, what if this guy outscores everyone else and I'm the only person that has that player, right? What if you pick the Eagles to lose this week and you're the only person that has Devonta Smith and he scores 2 touchdowns and he outscores everybody else, right? That's part of the strategy. That's a huge part of the strategy, in my opinion. So why don't we bring in our guest today, my guy Anand, and we'll break it all down. So now, what's up, brother? How we doing? You feeling
Coop.
refueled? You ready to go?
Coop, long time no see, man.
I know it's been a minute, dude. I'm telling you, we need 2 expos. We need Winter Expo.
We might need 4. I think it's got to become a quarterly event.
It's got to be quarterly. I think so as well, because you need the mid-season stuff too to really hash it out and drop a bunch of I told you so's.
Right. We need the mid-December I told you so's.
I think it's important.
Right. Especially about the tight ends, right?
You already know, dude. Well, because the mid-December, the mid-season I told you so's for tight ends is when everyone's like, oh yeah, they all stink. And then when guys get hurt, then they all come back around. So at the end of the day, the Jonnu Smiths and everybody, like they piece it together. But dude, every year tight end is brutal in September. You know that.
It's I don't think it gets talked about often enough. I think that's probably outside of quarterback the position that's most difficult to transition to from college to the NFL, because you're being paid 1/10 of both of these positions, but they're asking you to play wide receiver and block like a lineman.
Yeah, it's for real. And it's funny that Bill Belichick, that was his thought process years ago when everyone was paying these positions less. Guys like tight end, safety, even kicker, he was paying those positions more, and he made a killing on it for a while there. But you're right. It's one of the hardest positions. Not to mention, half these guys are asked to transition from a totally different position a lot of times. It's like so many of them are wide receivers or quarterbacks like Logan Thomas and Stone Smart, or or they're basketball players. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's crazy position. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. We're here to talk about FFPC Playoff Challenge. And what we're going to do, folks, is we'll go through every team and pick out all the players that we think are viable and put them on a sheet, and then we'll make the end team. Are you ready, bro?
Run it. Let's do it.
All right, let's pop it up. I put together a handy little sheet here to help us out. Boom, shakalaka. Do you want to start with the top teams? Do you want to start with your Rams? Where do you want to start?
I think it's, especially when you're building a roster like this, I think it's most profitable to start at the bottom with a team like the Texans, because if they happen to upset Kansas City, who everybody already has basically advanced to the Super Bowl, you're giving yourself a very premium advantage there. And, when we look at all the wide receivers that we have in this entire, playoff, um, I think the one that stands out is probably Nico Collins. And you're looking at, guys that can give you advantages further into the depth of the playoffs than people perceive. I don't necessarily know that the Texans are going to beat the Chiefs, but if they do, having multiple rounds of Nico Collins is going to be significantly more valuable than having, um, whoever it is that I think the Eagles throw out there or anyone else. So that's kind of my initial thought.
Now, and here's the thing that I was kind of talking about before you got on. So as part of this, at least for just our lineup here, we got to ask ourselves multiple questions. First, who wins? Though that's not necessarily always the end of the world, right? Because it's like, Nico Collins could score the most points this week in a loss. He could score the most points over multiple weeks, right? But in general, over multiple weeks, you're going to have the cream of the crop is going to rise to the top, right? So over a 3-game sample size, you would expect the good players to score the most points, even 2 games. But over a 1-game sample size, anybody can score the most points. So if we're just making a quick list of anyone on this team that you think could be the top scorer outside of CJ Stroud, who you're not going to use as our only quarterback, do you think it's possible for Mixon or maybe Schultz? I mean, we're not even going to think about the other wide receivers, right?
Yeah, I don't see a scenario where, because a lot of this is profiling the games that we're going to get, right? It's not just necessarily about who wins. I don't see a scenario where Mixon gets to the production that we would want out of an RB1 in this format. It's tough for me to see, even with CJ, right? Like all season long, he hasn't performed like a QB1 for fantasy purposes, even though we think that he's a very good player. I think that Nico is probably the safest bet on that team. I don't really think that there's much else outside of him that I'm excited about. But if you're taking the upside shot, I think that's the guy that I'd go with.
Yeah, I think so too. Now in tight end premium, Dalton Schultz, I mean, he's banged up, but no Cade Otton, so he's gonna have to play the whole game probably. And he is tight end premium, but we don't want to go there probably, right? I mean, if he would have to score multiple touchdowns.
There's a thought there, but the path required is so narrow that that's kind of one that I
last year, technically in this contest, in the week, because the Texans lost this round, Schultz, or no, they lost the first round, but Schultz and Collins scored exactly the same number of points. So it was a wash. But that tight end premium makes
Let's hope that doesn't happen again.
The
So I don't
tight
look
end.
like an idiot.
Well, you know what's funny, dude, is that the craziest one that happened last year in the main contest, the big contest that kind of rug pulled a ton of people, was week 1. Everyone picked CeeDee Lamb for the Cowboys, and then Jake Ferguson scored 3 touchdowns and had 10 catches and had the single highest scoring week of any player that wasn't a quarterback in this entire format.
Of course, you'd find a way to make this.
It has to, well, it's tight end premium. It's tight end premium, so we have to be thinking about him, man.
No, but I mean, it's exactly stuff like that, right? Where when you look at
putting his
these
name on the
mega
sheet.
contests, especially, yeah, I mean, when you look at these mega contests, so much of it is about figuring out what other people
Right.
will do and going against the grain a little bit. So, I mean, adding Schultz to that list is obviously
Right. We'll put
valuable
the
there.
alternatives in there, so that at the end we can ask ourselves, are we unique enough?
Yeah, that's really anytime you're building a roster of that size, whether it's BBM or this or anything of the sort. I think that's the question you have to ask: are we unique enough? Did we do enough to differentiate ourselves from the other, so to speak, average rosters that everybody else thinks will be those guys?
Now, the good thing about this contest is that it's very unique payout structure. Not like crazy unique, but rather than like the first place prize just being like, say you and I both come in first, we tie for first. Instead of just splitting the $50,000, and then everyone else gets the next prizes down, they pool the top prizes, which is kind of cool. So it's like the top prize is $100,000 and the $200 entry. That's what we're doing because we're big boss dogs. And if you come in, if you and I split it, they don't just have us split the top prize; they combine the top 2 prizes and then split that. So it's 100,000. Yeah.
Oh,
So it's like it takes the $100,000 prize and the $20,000 second place prize and splits it, but we're still only getting $60,000. Which, if you are completely unique, you get the full 100,000. So again, it's like a little bonus there, but no matter how you slice it, you're getting crushed. And the more people you split with, the more of those smaller prizes get tacked in there, and it really doesn't go much higher. I think it's like, I mean, you're only getting less.
It's cool. It's cool because I think, especially when you get to the final stages of a big prize pool, one of the biggest concerns and one of the things that we hear from people a lot is, if you finish 5th out of 20,000 people, your payout just isn't enough. And so I think, when you get to that level, if it is split, I think that's a great way to go about doing it.
This one, for those wondering, I can have it right here. This contest. There's 2 contests: $200 buy-in or $35 buy-in. And if you use promo code ALARM at myffpc.com, they'll give you $25 when you deposit $35 or more. So if you wanted to do 2 of the $35 ones, you deposit $45 and they give you 25, and now you got $70 to use, right? The payouts for this one, when we pull those puppies up, $200 buy-in, first place $100K, second place 20, then third 10, and it goes down 7, 5, 4, 3, 2,500. But there are good prizes. Like if you finish anywhere in the top 50, $500, right? If you finish anywhere in the top 150, $200, you're at least getting your money back, or you can get into a best ball tournament. So not too bad, right? Not too bad.
Yeah.
Out of, I think they capped the contest at 1,425 people. Not terrible.
There you
go. So, okay, let's look at the Commanders here. And again, we have to have a player from each team. We do have to have a kicker and a defense, but I say we go through and just highlight the real players here, and then we'll do kicker and defense as the defaults later.
Yeah.
Commanders.
The obvious one is Jaden Daniels. I think when you look at kind of everything that they do and what's going to be required for them to win the game that they have to win, Jaden's going to have to be awesome. You could obviously throw McLaurin in there.
Yeah.
If you wanted to throw in Brian Robinson, you could do that as well.
Do we?
They're just, with this team specifically, it feels like, especially, I had both of them in SFB. There are weeks that Daniels, McLaurin just carried my entire team.
Right.
So it's one of those scenarios where I'm probably a little more biased than the average person in terms of how great they've been this year because I watched them do it. But man, if you could ever find the stack, especially in a best ball format, if they get further than this week, that's a stack that can absolutely win you a week.
Yeah.
On their
Well, the
own.
problem is no stacking. Only one player from each team. So there goes the stack out the window, right?
So the stack goes out the window, and then you ask yourself who is
Right.
more valuable. To me, among what we have left, and obviously we'll go through them, I think B-Rob or McLaurin are probably more valuable than what Daniels is at QB.
Because the thing with the QB, I will say this, and I mentioned this before you popped in. You need your QB to play 2 games. You don't need him to play all 3. Last year, the guy that won had Lamar Jackson. He won they won the division round, lost next round, but he played in 2 games. He put up big enough points. And then the guy that won the whole thing had Lamar Jackson at QB, and in the Super Bowl, which is double points, he had Christian McCaffrey and he had Travis Kelce, and the double points for Travis Kelce put up big numbers for him. So we just need him to play in 2 games, not win 2 games if we're going to have our quarterback. But if you want to go Daniels, that means we're picking the Commanders to win.
Yeah, I think if it's going to be Daniels, you've got to basically assume that the Commanders will at least put up a nuclear game in the NFC Championship game.
They have to.
And obviously that involves getting there.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So kind of in that same Lamar Jackson vein. But yeah, for me, if I'm really picking amongst those 3, given what else we have here, it's either going to be McLaurin or B-Rob.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. And that's the thing is that I don't see a world where B-Rob outscores McLaurin. I mean, it's obviously possible, but like, what are the conditions against the Lions where B-Rob outscores McLaurin in a losing effort?
I just think that it would have to be one of those games where Jared Goff goes total nerf. You're talking about 3+ interceptions, potentially a fumble in there where they get a lead and they have the ability to hang on to it. I don't see that as a really viable game path.
But then the Lions come back and win at the end.
It's a 1%.
Right? The old Kirk Cousins though. That's the Kirk Cousins. You dig a crazy hole, and then you dig a tunnel to the beach. You dig a tunnel out. So it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's very likely, but when you're charting all these paths, right? When you're trying to build a team out like this, the 1% outcomes have to be at least considered, only because you want a unique team when we're talking about this, right? You don't want to split that grand prize. You want that $100,000 to yourself.
Exactly. And it's like, that's the thing is that if we have an identical team to somebody else, but Olamide Zacchaeus outscores Terry McLaurin, that could be the difference maker. But how likely is it to happen? That's why it's like, I think there's some in here where that's possible. We might want to do that, but like on this one, I don't know if we want to do
that. Yeah, it's and there have been games where Zacchaeus is outscored.
I know he has. I know he has.
And it's so you're not talking about a scenario where this is a playoff one-off and we've never seen this before. But yeah, I mean, I think all of those are valid criticisms, and to me, I think the safest floor here is probably B-Rob, but to me, I think you probably want to chase the upside of a McLaurin. But as we're going up this chart, and we have teams with, what we think are better players, it's going to be tough to find a commander that we really want to roster.
So I think I'm leaning McLaurin as well. So, all right, let's move on to the Rams, your squad here. We also have Ani Coop in the house. Big Rams fan contingency here with the likes for Lainey and Dad. Yes, shout out to the lovely Lainey. She got a new toy, a moo cow today. So it's a big day. It's a big day around here. We're mooing all over the house today. So, but all right, Rams, man, break it down. What are the chances they win? Do you have them covering?
I think that they cover. I don't think that they win. My personal opinion here is I would avoid Stafford because he's a much better actual quarterback than he is.
He needs to go to the Super Bowl for us to win.
Right. And that's just it. To me, the path involved in Matthew Stafford being QB1 in this kind of format is basically not viable. Even if they make the Super Bowl and even potentially win it, he's just not going to put up the numbers that you need at QB.
To put
Cup,
that in, to
Nakua
just
are
real quick jump
obviously
in and put that in perspective. 2021, the FFPC Playoff Challenge main event, when they did win the Super Bowl, right? That was 2021. The player that you wanted to have was actually Cooper Kupp.
Yeah. So it's just I love Matthew Stafford with all my heart. It's just he's not going to fantasy wise produce the numbers that you want there. You can take Nakua, you can take Cup, one or the other. The tough part is kind of post week 14. Cooper Kupp has been
Bro,
non-existent. NPC.
I went back and watched. I went back and watched every play from the Bills through now, and I couldn't see any play where he got jacked up or broke a finger or what's going on, man? What are you seeing?
I don't know. It could just be age. It could be that they're trying to take him away over Puka, which I don't really see. That's on my end when I watch it. It's 17's getting open and 10's not, and it breaks my heart. There's a really fun argument to be made here for a DeMarcus Robinson, and the argument there would basically be, we'll get to the Lions last, obviously, but it's the same argument that you'd have with the Jameson Williams, where you need one play a game from them to be a viable wide receiver one in this format. I just don't think when you're talking about guys that are going to get targets, I don't know that anyone will get more targets than Puka Nacua will. In our entire list, McLaurin, Collins, when we get to the others, I think if targets are perceived fantasy points, which is how we view things over here, I don't know that there's a better player than Nacua.
I just feel like everyone's going to have him, and I just keep asking. We're going through and watching. They've been having Kupp run some deeper routes, but like it's the dead giveaway that I don't think he's hurt is they have him blocking, and they have him motioning at times in how he does it. They motion him in very close to the line of scrimmage and have him blocking linebackers. And it's like if he's got like a rib issue or something, they wouldn't be doing that. I feel like we got to pull a wide receiver 2 or 3 from one of these teams. Yeah, I feel like we should keep Kupp on the radar.
I feel like Kupp's up there.
I'm willing to bet the over because here's the thing: you look at the props for these guys. Kupp is set low as I've ever seen him at 39.5. I'm betting the over on that for receiving yards. But Nacua is also he's set at like 60, 70, depending where you look. I mean, if one of them scores a touchdown, the other doesn't. That's all it takes sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's for any of these guys, that we're talking about potentially at wide receiver, one play, one busted coverage, and you're covering your entire week on one side.
Especially for the losing teams.
That's what's so tough about it. Yeah, that's what's so tough about it is you're looking at like your, if we were to use Kupp as an example. He might have 2 targets. One of them's a busted coverage, and he ends up with 2 catches for 87 yards and a touchdown. That's more than enough.
And then every team that has Nacua, we're now ahead of them because the team played one game and they lost, and our guy scored more than them. That's somewhere in here we have to find that. Might not be this one, but they're out there. Last year there was a couple of them. I mentioned before you got on, I mentioned that with the Bills it was Khalil Shakir. Right, or maybe I recapped it when you got on that he scored more than Aaron Jones, Dalton Kincaid, all those guys. Man, so Diggs, so it's out there somewhere for us. It's out there somewhere. Dude, I don't know why. I just feel like Kupp he still has it, man. All right, let's move on to the next one here. So these odds on the left, for anyone wondering, are not odds to win the Super Bowl. We do not care who wins the Super Bowl. We only care about making it to the Super Bowl. So these are the odds of making it to the AFC or NFC, winning the AFC or NFC championship, making it to the Super Bowl. And we've seen in these contests that, for instance, when the Eagles played the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes threw 3 touchdown passes. Very nice. But Jalen Hurts threw 1 touchdown pass and ran for 3, and he lost. So, but he was a better quarterback for fantasy. So All we have to do is make it there. This game is kind of everything though, right? Now, Bills, Ravens.
Yeah.
First off,
Yeah.
it's such a stupid and tough question. Who do you think wins the game?
I think it's Buffalo's
Yeah.
time. I think it's Buffalo's time. And if you'd asked me this question 2 or 3 months ago, I probably would have had a different answer.
Right.
There is something special about, and we talk about this all the time in the college football landscape as opposed to the NFL. When someone goes down, when you know that your team is a little bit diminished, when your starting quarterback goes down, there's a chance that the rest of the team raises their performance to meet that original floor. And in aggregate, your team is actually somehow better, and it doesn't make sense and it doesn't register. There are a lot of NBA examples of this that aren't really NFL examples. But I think that losing Stephon Diggs for the Bills, even though losing a great player, I think in aggregate, they've become a better team because they're not as reliant, especially on offense, on one guy. Allen's developed into a tremendous football player. He's an awesome quarterback. Love watching him play. And obviously the Ravens have done a lot of things to retool their roster as well. But for some reason, I can't shake the feeling that at some point, if you keep bashing your head into the wall, eventually you're going to break through. And it feels like Baltimore has been there one more time than they can really handle. I think last year was their shot, kind of the way that we're looking at Buffalo this year. So I think it's their time. I think it's going to be an awesome game. But I mean, you can literally list every skill player on both teams.
Right. That's the problem.
Because
you make such a good point.
It's like
you make such a good point with the Bills, though. That's like you have one guy that gets 160 targets 4 years in a row, 70 first downs. Like that's to me, that's even bigger stats. Like this guy was getting every first down for this team, and then now they have nothing you can really take away, right? Like if you take away Khalil Shakir, who cares?
Dawson Knox is going to kill you. Do you want death by Dawson Knox? Because they'll
do
it.
You can't even. You can't. It's like fighting Mayweather, right? You don't even know where to hit the punch. It's like some of these teams like are very, very top heavy, and I think that can be a problem. I think it was a big problem for the teams like the Dolphins, where it's like if you're going to use a fullback, and especially last year they used a fullback in Durham Smythe for all those snaps. They were only giving the ball to 3 guys. So I think it's a great point. It makes them the most difficult team to pick if we don't pick Josh Allen.
Yeah, it's the thing is the Bills are going to go as Allen goes, but he's going to be probably the most rostered quarterback. It's either going to be him or Lamar. And if you're going to choose a QB from this game, they're either going to carry your team or you're dead on arrival. There's no, like that. That's the tough part about this is it'd be if one of them was playing Kansas City and you can kind of play the contrarian, like we were talking about with the Texans. Then at least you have a shot there. But I
look if
we
pick a quarterback from this game to win, I'm gonna bet. If we pick a quarterback from this game, I'm gonna put $100 on the other team to win, and just hedge our bets right away, dude. Just such a cowardly hedge move, but still, it's almost like we're guaranteed. If we pick Josh Allen and the Bills win, we're guaranteed to get our money back essentially.
Coop, hedging is for
not gamblers, right? Well, I don't. I'm just saying, it's like now we get a free ticket. I feel it's like almost a free ticket. So we'll see.
Like
but okay, so let's say we're not going to pick Josh Allen. What are the names?
I think a wide receiver. You've got to look at Shakir, James Cook, obviously there. At tight end, Buffalo might be the most aggravating tight end duo to figure out. I'm sure you've already talked about this ad nauseum.
More snaps for Knox, more routes running targets for Kincaid. They're both splitting. Quentin Morris will probably score a touchdown.
Right. Yeah. It's just like looking at the Texans and it's Darren Quintoriano that's scoring a touchdown. Like, I have zero.
I think Teagan, if he's activated this week, that's super annoying. Irv Smith
I'm sure
is a deep. I'm throwing the DFS. I'm throwing a DFS start at Herb Smith, bro. Don't even that. We'll talk about that on the
Of
show.
course you
We're
are.
talking DFS tonight, 6 to 8 p.m. Sirius XM channel 87, and I'm just saying, what's his name? Cade Stover broke his collarbone, bro. He's not walking through that door.
Yeah, I'll see him on Monday night in
I'm sure
Atlanta.
he'll be out there.
But I'm
Check
sure he'll
in
be
on him.
around. But yeah, it's tough because I don't think that either of the Bills' tight ends are worth a dart throw, only because they're going to take production away from the
Right.
other, and you never want to be wrong in that scenario, right? Like you could pick the wrong tight end overall and be okay, but you don't want to pick the wrong tight end.
The
on a
odds of you
team.
picking the
That
wrong
would
tight end
suck.
on a team and then losing, like the odds of you winning the whole thing are it's over. Yeah.
Very low.
So yeah, okay, let's stay away from that then. Shakir or Cook, I feel like those are picks we make. And again, it's almost like a game theory thing, right? It's like if we think the Bills are going to win, we want Allen. If we think the Bills are going to lose, what's the path to James Cook having a really good game and they lose? I mean, it's possible, but the Ravens are also the toughest run defense in the league.
I think the answer there is if we think the Bills are going to lose, then I think
You're
it's
right.
Shakir, because he'll get enough targets. And again, fantasy football in a lot of ways is about hacking a system. So your catches and your yards and potential touchdowns obviously matter much more than the impact that you actually had on a game. And we a lot of times treat these as independent outcomes, right? Oh my God, this player was awesome. He made the catch on fourth down. Yeah, but in fantasy football, that's still 1.7 points. So for us, spamming the X button like we're playing PlayStation, like they like to do to Shakir, is probably
It
pretty
is.
valuable and maybe even more valuable than a Bills win. But I think that's kind of the way
Yeah, I
that I
feel
do.
you. And again, this one's so tough because like typically in a game like this, I would say like, oh, let's just pick like the defense, but I don't think the defenses are in a tough spot in this game.
Yeah, let's take the defenses
I
against
know.
Lamar Jackson
That's
and
what I'm saying.
Josh Allen. Good call
We
there,
gotta take a
Coop.
defense somewhere. It's like, what are we gonna take the Texans defense against the Chiefs? Maybe, actually. Maybe. Okay, let's get the Ravens here. I'm just gonna put Lamar Jackson there and Derrick Henry's name on here. Beep, boop, boop. We are going to have a tight end from one of these teams. Unfortunately for you and all your tight end bashing ways.
I think I just think it's such a tough position to play, and for me, the way that I would look at it is not to get too ahead of ourselves, but the tight end that I probably want is Laporta, and I think it's because so much of the exposure to the Lions is gonna be Gibbs, Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, where if you wanted to zag where others zig, the offense is going to be great and will get them down into the red zone. And we've seen them feature Laporta before. That's where I would throw my dart because I think everybody else is going to go to the other three. While obviously, Kelsey's going to get a lot of money because he's Travis Kelsey. And to me, with the Eagles specifically, they like rushing touchdowns way too much for me to look into anyone there. Where if you're building your roster saying we're going to lock one player in, which is how I've built a lot of mine, not to tremendous success, but we've done all right from time to time. That's the guy that I would lock in. Is I'm locking in that my tight end is Laporta, and we're building everything downstream.
I mean, if we pick Laporta, like if we're basing because again, you're basing your whole thing on a theory. If we were to pick the Commanders to beat the Lions, Laporta as a tight end premium player to outscore everybody in one game, it's possible. It's just that's a tough pick. But again, in tight end, like Travis Kelsey, like in the main event 2 years ago, a guy that won the $35 one had 4 tight ends in his line. Yeah, he had Kelsey, he had TJ Hawkinson. Hawkinson played one game and dropped like 35 points, 10 catches, right? Because the tight end premium, like 10 catches is 15 points. He had Evan Engram, who also played one game and just scored the most on the Jaguars. And then he had Dalton Schultz for the Cowboys, who won a game and then lost. And Schultz just again, tight end premium. It's like if that we underestimate how many times in a game, a losing team, everybody on the team has like 5 or 6 catches, and 5 or 6 catches for 5 catches for 60 yards for a wide receiver is 11 points, and 4 catches for 50 yards is more points for a tight end. That's just the way of the tight end premium, brother. So
Yeah.
is Zay Flowers even going to play? Do we have an update on that?
I don't know. I don't think so. From talking to people in Baltimore, they don't seem overly optimistic about it.
Didn't practice
So, yeah, they don't seem overly optimistic that he's going to be able to actually, even if he suits up, they're not overly optimistic that he will be Zay Flowers. And I think that's really the thing that matters. We'll talk about whether he's active or inactive and how much he'll impact the game. But in this case, all we care about is the stats. We don't care about, defensive pass interference calls that he's gotten against them or scheme that will take something away from him.
I got a stat here on Mark Andrews. I tweeted earlier this week. Listen to this. Mark Andrews games against the Bills, including playoffs. Ready? 3 catches for 31. This is going back the oldest to most recent. 3 catches for 31. No touchdown. 1 catch for 14. No touchdown. 4 catches for 28. No touchdown. 2 catches for 15. No touchdown. Earlier this year, with no Matt Milano, 0 catches.
Yeah, like the thing that people have to understand about Mark Andrews as a tight end is he's a giant wide receiver. And there's a difference between giant wide receivers and actual tight ends. Your George Kittles of the world are actual tight ends. He's willing to dig out a block and really play basically offensive tackle. They're struggling to find places to put Mark Andrews on the field because as long as you're not the best receiver we have, it's almost always better to put in an actual blocking tight end and a legitimate receiver as opposed to trying to get one guy to fit both roles. I think Buffalo's done a fantastic job of taking him away and forcing Lamar to hit receivers, whether it's Bateman or whether it's Flowers, whoever it is, beyond that. But Isaiah Likely too. That's where you look, right? When we're looking for the guys that could potentially have one supernova game that kind of tilts the math in your favor.
I think that's the way, man. And I'll tell you, I think the math that people run into with Mark Andrews is that you say to yourself, okay, if he's a wide receiver, well, they just start 3 wide receivers. But when you put a fullback out there for like 30, 40% of the snaps, who comes out of the game? Not the running back, not Isaiah Likely. It's got to, and as of late, not Zay Flowers or not Rashad Bateman. So somebody got to come out.
Yeah.
And Matt Milano is back, and he is just a real problem for tight ends. So I just really don't want to start Mark Andrews, maybe Likely, but I think we might just shy away completely. Let's go to the Eagles here. Eagles, this is probably one of the toughest teams to pick because mega stars. And they also have the rope-a-dope type players. Like, we're not going to pick Goddard because as you pointed out, he's just not an end zone target. He just never has. He has not been since Carson Wentz and Nick Foles days. Has not gotten 5 end zone targets in a season since Carson Wentz and Nick Foles. And to put that in perspective,
is that real?
100%, dude. Dude, over the last he has 4 this year. Over the last leading into this year, over the last 3 years combined, he had 7. To put that in perspective, last year Donald Parham had 7 just last year. Like, the dude is just push, man. Why would you no need to throw the big? So
then you can go ahead and fill these in. It's pretty simple. It's Jalen. It's
it's
AJ Brown, Devontae Smith.
Yeah, so that's the thing, is that this is another one where it's like
Saquon. See, the thing is, for me, the way that I assess risk in this kind of situation is I'll just build this team out as though they're not winning. Because if we try to dissect which Eagle we want, it's almost a detriment. Like, I think the most valuable one on this entire list is probably Barkley. Or Hurts, one or the other, but you have no idea who's going to score those touchdowns. It's the same thing with Lamar and Derrick Henry, where, you could have a 4-touchdown Lamar Jackson game that absolutely tilts everything in favor of the Lamar teams. You could have a 4-touchdown Saquon Barkley game where it tilts everything in favor of those teams. But if you try to build your team around that, you have to have that outcome come to fruition to have a shot. And so I'm personally avoiding all of them because so much of there are a lot of parallels between the Eagles and the Ravens, between your quarterbacks and your running backs there. So much of it is just who gets the touchdowns. And that's not something that we can really predict with any reasonable manner. And so I'm avoiding all of them.
And that's the thing is it's like we got to pick a kicker and defense somewhere, and we got to make some sort of move. And I'll tell you, in the chat, Scott Kobe points out, he goes, "Do you guys pivot off Jackson or Allen and go Goff as QB in the FFPC 2, knowing if you pick Jackson or Allen, they lose, and you don't have a QB for 2 rounds?" I mean, that's a concern, but the way it's very valid. But the way that we play this, we play it in a way that we want to win the big prize. You know what I mean? Like,
Scott, you have to, in this kind of format, you have to proceed as though you're right.
Bingo.
You can't plan for contingencies. There can't be a fail-safe. You have to pretend that you're right all the way through in a build like this. And so if we're eliminating options, right, the reason that we would never go with the Jared Goff, despite the fact that we think he might make a Super Bowl, is he's not capable of a week big enough going supernova that even if he doesn't advance to a Super Bowl or beyond, that he's usable.
Exactly. And that's the thing is that you got to decide how you're going to play too. Like we're playing to win. And if you're playing multiple of these, we're playing to win the whole thing. So like we're going to go lean into something that'll create as much leverage as possible, right? It's like if you're doing if you're doing a lot of lineups, right? You're creating them in a way that you have a ton of high leverage lineups. And same thing with best ball, right? Like the analogy I usually use then is the turtles. What we're doing is we're creating all these baby turtles, right? And they're going to go out there on the beach. And the weak ones, I mean, I hate to say it, nature is pretty metal, folks. The weak ones aren't going to make it. But the strong ones that make it to the water, they're going to have so much leverage that our teams are going to be built in a way that the everything has gone perfectly right for us to win a crazy amount of money. That's how it goes here. So it's like you can build a very conservative team with just the chalk, and maybe you get your money back, but that's not our goal. Our goal is to win $100,000.
You're not going to win with that.
Yeah, and new watches and beers at the expo. Like that's the deal. So that's how we're going to build this one. And if we want to fade,
we'll buy Canton.
Right, exactly. If we want to fade the Eagles, fade the Eagles. So let's throw the Chiefs and the Lions up here, and then we'll build this team. On the Chiefs, this one's kind of, again, it's another one of those ones where this isn't a great fantasy football team, right? Like they're not pumping out points, but they certainly can in the playoffs for a 4-game stretch. And there's a lot of guys on this team that could have 1 or 2 games where they just score more than everybody else. And the list is pretty long.
I think for the Chiefs, this is, to me, your default. You take the defense here.
This is where we go defense.
And this is where we go defense because I think a lot of the ways that they're winning lately, at least, are shutting people down. It's not that Pat's throwing for 405 scores anymore. It's not that Kelsey has 6 for 180 and 2 scores. It's not Isaiah Pacheco running roughshod over someone's defense for 102 scores anymore. It's now kind of, Spags' defense is holding people to 14 or 17. And if you're looking at all these teams that we have here, as great as Mahomes is, he's a much better real-life quarterback than he's a fantasy one. Wide receiver, we're trying to pick amongst a plethora of options. And yes, there's a chance that someone scores 3 touchdowns out of there, and they're the reason that someone wins FFPC. Running back, we're still trying to figure out who's going to get the red zone touches there. Tight end is obviously Travis, but that's going to be one of the highest played players.
You got it. You made it. You made it there
in this format. in this format, right? So you're looking at this and you're trying to figure out, how do I get exposure to KC that makes sense with this team making a deep run? And I think the answer is the defense.
Because the thing with the defense, there have been teams in this contest that have the defense and the kicker winning a game, but if the Chiefs go to the Super Bowl, we're in trouble. Unless the Chiefs defense scores 2 touchdowns in the Super Bowl, which maybe, but I like the idea of going Chiefs defense. I mean, we could go Chiefs defense and Eagles kicker, but if we wanted to fade them completely, but we would have to leverage that by picking our core, like by potentially going and picking, like, how do we leverage that, right? Like, how do we lean heavily into the Rams? Puka Nacua?
I think that the way to go about leaning into the Rams is probably Nacua. If we're going to do that, if that's the angle that you're going to go, because your build has to be, the goal here is to have a unique build that has a legitimate shot of taking the whole thing down. And so picking Nacua as your wide receiver is not going to be an uncommon pick, but adding the Chiefs defense and Philly's kicker, as opposed to everybody else that are going to take Jalen Hurts and, Travis Kelce. I think when you look at how many builds are going to be out there that look the way that ours looks, if you build the team around KC's defense, Philly's kicker, I don't think they're going to be a lot of them.
And what's funny about, if you think about the team that won this last year, like, things didn't go the way they planned, right? Like, if you pick Travis Kelce, it's not because you think the Chiefs go to the Super Bowl. When they picked Lamar Jackson, they thought the Ravens were going to the Super Bowl, right? 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, you can still win. You just have to figure out a narrative, right? And with us, we're talking Lions, we're talking Laporta. I mean, how can we say that Laporta might not be the pick when last year the pick was Kelce?
Yeah, I think when you look at specifically how what you're trying to figure out here in a lot of ways is touchdown distribution. And you're trying to remove a lot of the elements of randomness from a thing that is ultimately random. And so your Laporta specifically, because he hasn't scored as many touchdowns as people want this year, I think he's a little bit of a discount. I think people have watched Travis Kelce do it. They've watched Dalton Schultz be a top 5 tight end. They've watched Isaiah Likely score touchdowns at points. Yeah. And so I think people will take him.
And I have to stop you right there. After all this, I wrote an article on this where I put the lineups in there, and the chat is right. There is no kicker defense on this one. Yeah. So we apologize, folks. We were kind of thinking the original challenge, no kicker or defense. So we can still play.
Damn it,
that's my fault. But we can still play around that by just picking players that, rather than picking kicker or defense for the teams we're fading, picking one-off players that we think can have one big game, right? So, like, do we go with Devonta Smith for the Eagles? Do we for the Chiefs? I mean, the list is long, right? You could go with Hollywood Brown. You could go with DeAndre Hopkins. You could go with
what if your wide receiver, and this is just a total random thought, right? Like, if you look at these odds, the Lions are the most likely team to make it to either championship game and then the Super Bowl.
Yep.
What if you go Jameson Williams and you just trust that he will get you 2 for 80 in a score in each game? Because so many will choose Amon-Ra St. Brown. You're going to have a bunch of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith teams. You'll have Shakir, Nacua, Kupp, McLaurin, Collins. At some point, you have to be different enough. And
the thing is with J-Mo, like, and you mentioned 2 games, but he's also a guy that you pick. Like, you pick J-Mo if you think the Lions, in my opinion, you pick J-Mo if you think the Lions aren't going to the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
Because if over the course of 3 games, you would expect, especially if they're winning 2 of them, you would expect Gibbs to have big games, or you'd expect Amon-Ra St. Brown to average out more over that. But if they win 1 game, or if they lose this week, J-Mo could easily be the top scorer. Yeah. So I like that. I also preemptively, because I know of your love of Jameson, our team name is in as J-Mo was his name up. So
Love that.
it would fit
That's
fit
good.
the mold.
Yeah.
I figured whether we pick him or not, it could throw people off either way.
Here's
So
the thing.
I like the idea of that. So given what we have, and again for Chiefs, like now that Chad has correctly pointed out, no kicker or defense in this one, which crazy that I just wrote an article a couple days ago and I totally spaced
Hey
on
man,
that.
it's a wild time to be a content creator this time of year.
It surely is. But yes, I scrambled my brain watching like 7,000 plays of players this week trying to do my film study thing. But anyway, with the Chiefs, like if we were to pick one wide receiver, like we were to have them potentially win one or two games, who do you like best out of Worthy, Hollywood Brown, or DeAndre Hopkins?
I think it's going to be Worthy, but there's something that we haven't considered that I think we should talk about, where if KC were to advance, touchdowns are very random, as we know.
True.
I think there's a Noah Gray angle here.
The thing with Gray is
I know it hurts your soul to discuss.
We would have to have them losing this week. We'd have to have them losing this week. The thing is, his snaps have decreased a little bit since Marquise Brown came back. So he is a one game, like, what if he scored 2 touchdowns and they lost?
Right.
That's like the play there.
Yeah.
So we'd have to think that way.
Yeah. And I don't think that that's the case. But I'm just saying, for anybody that's trying to build out a roster or a bunch of these with us, right? I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention the fact that there is a chance that there are 3 tight end touchdowns in a Chiefs game, and none of them are Travis Kelce.
Right. Well, okay. Let's see. Yeah, that's what makes me kind of not want to do Kelce. Like again,
I have zero desire there, bro.
Yeah. All right. Let's switch over and take a quick look at how these shake out. And again, if you want to play against us, and again, we don't even know the rules, so you definitely want to jump in and play against us in these. And these will fill. This will fill by tomorrow. There's only like a couple hundred spots left when I grabbed ours. So use promo code ALARM ALARM at myffpc.com. They'll give you $25 when you deposit $35 or more, and you can get in. This one's $200 that we're doing, but the other one is $35, much more reasonable. So here's the thing. So we just mentioned kind of that we're fading so many teams, but we can't fade everybody. Like somebody has to win. And I want to go back real quick to, we were saying, we might fade the Eagles. The thing about picking Puka Nacua is that doesn't quite the problem I have with the idea of like picking Nacua because we think the Rams beat the Eagles, if just hypothetically, is that people are picking Nacua regardless. It doesn't give us any edge.
Yeah, and so that's why I think when you look at the receivers that we could take, I think the one that stands out as the most unique is probably McLaurin. Yeah. Because no one's going to take a commander.
You have to pick one player from every team.
Yeah, but I think that there are going to be a lot of people that take Daniels and B-Rob.
Yeah. Okay. I think McLaurin. I think I'm fully on board with McLaurin and putting him in as the first guy in the lineup, because I think that's one where deductive analysis. I mean, like there's an off chance that Ertz and tight end premium has one good game, but like he's not really.
The question to me is QB, because there are so many ways that you can go here. You could take Jalen and assume that he gets the rushing touchdowns. You could take Goff in the assumption, like the chat said, you take Goff under the assumption that he makes it there. Stafford, I just don't think makes sense. Mahomes doesn't score enough points. I think to me, it's really your difference between your Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, where the scary part there is your QB could be done 1 week in. So I don't know how to feel about that.
Right. But it's like, again, we're playing to win. And a lot of people could be scared off from that. And they're being scared off from the 2 guys that are the MVP candidates.
I think it's Josh Allen.
I think that's and it makes it, the thing is, it's also harder to pick a position player bill. So it just it solves that problem. Greg, the thing about the combos, this format you can't do that. With this one, you're making one lineup. for the rest of the entire rest of the playoffs, the next 3 rounds. And there's 8 teams. You have to pick one player from each team. So we can't stack, unfortunately, here. But picking Josh Allen solves us a lot of headaches, to be honest. Because now we don't have to pick between.
Now you take Derrick Henry.
Right.
Because
and now we go back to our sheet and we say, okay, boom, quarterbacks are off the board. And now it's Derrick Henry or Isaiah Likely, Derrick Henry in the snow.
Yeah. I think that's your best way to limit your liability. If you're going to build a lineup like this, because I don't think James Cook has the single game viability that a Derrick Henry does.
Right. Exactly. And
so if you're going to build him out that way, I think this is the best way to do it.
Henry historically has gotten better as the season went on. He's better in the cold.
You don't want to tackle that guy.
It's gonna snow. Yeah, exactly. He could be.
I don't want to tackle that guy.
And the thing is, I guess we are cooked if the Bills lose.
Yeah,
but
I mean, I think given the quarterback landscape that we have,
I think so many. What we have to forget that fact and just remember that, so many teams are just cooked if they don't. You're just cooked if you don't pick the right players in general.
Yeah,
straight up.
Yeah.
So, let's worry more about picking the right players from the right teams. So we go back. Let's go back over. We've got a Raven. We've got a Bill. Here's actually kind of the interesting curveball, which is pretty rare in fantasy football. But you have to have 2 running backs. We can't pick Cook now. We have to have another running back. So does it just make our lives easier to pick Saquon Barkley? Because we're not. We already picked McLaurin.
Yeah, but at the same time, the concern is how unique will this team look? That's where I think. Yeah, I think you have to take Barkley here, given what's available.
That's what I'm saying. It's we're not going to pick Mixon.
You're not going to take Kyron.
We're not going to take Kyron. We're not going to take Mixon. So it's almost like we have to, unless we want to go back and
we have to take Barkley.
That's what I'm saying. So we're going to have to get different somewhere else. Just based on everything that we laid out, we have to get different somewhere else. And the thing is, Barkley can, even if they lose this week, Barkley can still score a ton of points.
Yeah, I'm sure he will. I mean, having Saquon and Derrick Henry is never a bad spot to be in.
Yeah. I mean, we're already getting different by having Laporta, because you can start so many flexes that you can just start Gibbs or Amon-Ra St. Brown no matter if you want,
Yep.
So let's put Laporta in there. If we wanted to put in Cooper Kupp, like I was saying, then we can go chalk with the rest of it. Are you that averse to Cooper Kupp?
No, I'm not. I think special football player, great dude. It's one of those, we are truly believing in the idea that Cooper is a different dude in the playoffs, which he has been before. And we're trying to get unique that way. But if you're drafting, let's say 100 of these teams, 1, maybe 2 of them have a Laporta Cooper Kupp stack. And if that's how we go unique, that's how we go unique. I'm not mad about it at all.
Well, yeah, and again, we kind of went back on the JMO idea. I mean, we could still go. The thing is, if we go JMO, we have to start Dalton Schultz.
Respectfully, no.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But it could turn out that Schultz is the key. But I just don't want.
Even if he does that, I'm very happy going down with taking Laporta.
Yes.
I will be perfectly happy if we win $0, but we took Laporta over Schultz.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I think I'm all right there.
Scott, we have great thoughts about Amon-Ra St. Brown. We're making that move to go different because we're picking the chalk with Josh Allen, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Terry McLaurin. Those are very chalky plays. So we're picking Laporta to differentiate ourselves. That's what we're doing here, and it's tight end premium, so it plays right into his hands in that sense.
We just need to have one big game.
Yeah. To wrap this up, let's just now, for our last 2 picks, what have we kind of said to ourselves happens here? We're saying Josh Allen goes deep, right?
Mm-hmm.
if the Eagles go to the Super Bowl, we're fine because we have Barkley.
Mhm.
If the Commanders go to the Super Bowl, the Jaden Daniels team is going to be a problem, but we're probably okay. If the Rams go to the Super Bowl, we're in trouble. I think this kind of implies that we're thinking the Eagles go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, based on what we've done, for sure.
Yeah.
We're on a collision course for an Eagles-Lions NFC Championship game, and then probably a Chiefs-Bills AFC Championship game.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what we've.
Yeah. Higbee is a different play, but Higbee also went to the hospital coughing up blood after the game, during the game. So I don't know. That worries me. So for remaining players here, we need a player from the Texans. Nico?
I think it's Nico. Yeah. I would have said, like, it would be wonderful for them to have either Tank or Stephon, but obviously they don't. And, I don't think it's going to be Mixon. I think if we get a blow-up game from anybody, it's probably going to be Nico. And if they advance, that's going to be why.
Yeah, exactly. And if he blows up and they advance, then we kind of need them to lose to Josh Allen anyway.
Yeah.
So if we go Nico and Worthy, does that look different enough from what you think most people are going to do?
The only question I'd have is, do we want to go with someone a little more obscure than Worthy? I think we're different enough. There's a lot of chalk there, but the different enoughs are different enough.
I think you make a good point, and I think here's how we should do it. Because like Kelsey's the chalk, right? He's the secure. So what do you feel better about? Kelsey Nakua? Sorry, Kelsey Cup or Worthy Nakua?
I think Worthy Nakua is the better duo. I think right now you're going to have a lot of people that are going to put Kelsey into lineups because of his last name and what he's done in playoffs past and in years past. I am totally unwilling to subscribe to the theory that he's going to be that again until he does it. And if he does it again, great. It's kind of like when Brady hit the age of 40 and everybody was just like, dude, we're expecting you to slow down a little bit. I'm riding with.
Yeah. And if our bet is on Josh Allen going to the Super Bowl, if the Rams go to the Super Bowl, what are the odds of in 3 games Cooper Kupp outscores Puka Nacua?
Zero.
Good. Yeah.
Virtually zero.
Right.
Sadly. And I love Cooper, but virtually zero.
Right now, yeah. So I think that's the way to go. And what we're essentially doing is we're fading to some degree. If the Lions or the Chiefs lose early, good. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we're rooting big time for the Bills. And we're rooting for the Eagles, whoever wins the Eagles and Rams game. I think that's the way to be.
Yeah.
I like this lineup. Folks, if you want to, here's the final lineup right here. Josh Allen at quarterback, Saquon Barkley at running back, Derrick Henry, the other running back, wide receivers, Puka Nacua and Terry McLaurin, Nico Collins, Xavier Worthy, Sam Laporta. If you want to play this game, you can start anybody you want. You can start the best player on every single team, essentially, except for quarterback, if you wanted to. And use promo code ALARM at myffpc.com. They'll give you $25 when you deposit 35 or more. So, dude, thank you so much for joining, man. Hey, I think we have a shot to. That's the fun thing about this is you put your lineup in and then you sit back and for, all day today and all day tomorrow, we could have $100,000 in our pocket. We don't know it yet, right? It's like it's possible.
I think the best part of it is that, right? We get a shot. Everybody gets a shot.
Everybody gets a shot, dude. We have a chance. Like they could take it away from us, but we have the chance. So hey, take a minute. Tell everybody what you got going on, man. I know you're jet setting around. Where are you in Chicago right now? Or
I'm in Chicago right now.
Okay.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Anand, aka Coop's best friend. Shout out to the group chat. And Most of what I do is for Player Profiler for Matt Kelly. We host a show together called The Decision Point, where we talk about NFL GMs and what their jobs actually are, as opposed to kind of how they're portrayed. But a lot of my life outside of that revolves around college football and the NIL space and kind of building organizations in the same way that an NFL organization runs. And so I get to be all over the place. I'll be in Atlanta January 20th for the national title game. I'll be in Mobile for the Senior Bowl, New Orleans for the Super Bowl. I'll be in at the Combine in Indianapolis, and then obviously the NFL Draft, which to me is my favorite NFL event of the year. So hope to catch you guys on the ride at Nanduri NFL on Twitter if you want to say hey at some point. But thanks, man. Great to be around.
Make sure you're following him and checking out the Decision Point, because you get the side of things that you don't get from a lot of places, right? You're looking at cap space, you're looking at roster construction, decision points. You know what I mean? You're looking at all that stuff. So I love it, man. And you have outside of, obviously we have to fade your Ohio State takes a little bit, dude. Got to dust the bias off a couple of those. I mean, those guys are always good, so you're usually pretty much right. But you got to dust the bias off that a little bit. But for the most part, you crush, man. So make sure you guys give him a follow. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, everybody in the chat. I'm going to be back in 2 weeks from now. We're taking time to get everything set up. I got a wedding to go to, and then we're going to just hammer the dynasty stuff and just hit the ground running from there. And then it's right back into it. Underdog is going to be opening up again soon, believe it or not, and we'll be rocking. So thank you guys. We will catch you guys